Cody Bellinger has revived his career, one of the best players in baseball right now, but will he be a Chicago Cubs next season? We're talking about it right now with 670s The Scores, Laurence Holmes on the Cubs baseball channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, everyone. All right, so Laurence Holmes, co-host of Bernstein and Holmes on 670 The Score. You can listen to the show 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and we're recording this show at 10 a.m., so I have to ask, Laurence, I'm guessing you are on vacation with the nice backdrop in the background. Thanks for coming on today, man.
Yeah, I'm on vacation. I love Mick. Me and Mick go back away. So when he said, "Hey, you got some time?" I was like, "You know what? I'm not doing anything. I got up this morning and we had a softball game last night. We play an immediate league here in Chicago. So last night we had a 9:00 game. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting started on trying to get the rust out this next morning. So I rode my bike. I live by the University of Chicago. It's right down the street. So I rode my bike over there. They've got an Olympic-sized pool, and they allow some of us to jump in there and get the soreness out. So I spent a half an hour in the pool, and I got to tell you, man, like there's in shape, and then there's swim shape.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Very different thing. So I'm already like, I don't regret it, but I'm definitely tired, and it's good, and it's a really, really good tire. But I had time, man, so I wanted to hang out with you guys.
Well, before we even get into this, I got to ask, you're talking about a softball team, a media softball team. Who's good on your team that I would know?
I mean, I don't know if there's anyone, because most of the I'm like the only host that plays.
Okay.
Oh, but it's
so
our
Bernstein doesn't play. No, Molly doesn't play.
No, Dan doesn't play. I wish we could get David Hall out here. Like David was a Division I safety. He played football at Ball State. I'm sure that he's got some skills. But we got a kid that works at our digital department named Kevin Lapka, who is by far the best player in the league.
Really?
Yeah, like it's embarrassing. Like he's so good, it's embarrassing. But look, man, last year 47, I made the All-Star team. So I'm really excited, and I think I made the play of the year this year. I'll send you the video, Mick.
I gotta see it.
You can see it. Like this dude hit a ball. It knocked me back. I was playing second base. It knocked me back. I threw him out from my butt. So, I showed it to David Ross, the Cubs manager, and he was impressed. Like because he said that he had been, he lives in a neighborhood where there's a lot of, in Chicago, if you don't know this, we play what's called 16-inch softball. So we don't play with a mitt. We just play with a ball that's about this big, and when it comes out of the bag, it's like rock hard, man. Like it is, it's almost as hard as a league ball. In the first couple of innings, you better make sure your hands are good and calloused up. And I mean, the 16-inch leagues in Chicago have been known to break fingers, and it's usually like a badge of honor. So that's what we do. Like we play in this league but Rossi said he was watching a bunch of guys. He's like, I didn't, because Rossi grew up in Florida. Mm-hmm. And he said, I didn't know that what this game was. I said, it's 16-inch. And one of the guys from the Cubs had said to him, he's like, Laurence made like some sort of crazy play last night. It's all over the internet. And he's like, all right, you got to show me. So I showed him the play. He's like, geez. He's like, that's a great play. I was like, I know. I said, a long time ago, I used to be good, and now I'm just hanging on by a thread. But I'll take making the All-Star team at 47. In a league of 12 teams filled with 20-year-olds, the fact that I made the All-Star team is a miracle.
I love it.
Sounds like you've turned the career around, man, and that's a perfect segue to Cody Bellinger, who had a couple of bad seasons after he was an MVP. Cody Bellinger's back to being one of the best players in baseball, and we're obviously focusing on the present, but at the same time, on a podcast like this, where we have on a guest like you, your thoughts on Cody Bellinger's chances of coming back long-term?
Well, I mean, he's going to get rich. He bet on himself and he won. He deserves it. There is a 9-figure deal in his future, and it kind of depends on if the Cubs think. I think if the Cubs think that they are actually in it for Shohei Ohtani, then you got to be like, hey, are you getting ready to allocate $500 million for Shohei Ohtani? Who's worth it? Does that allow you to give $250 million to Cody Bellinger? If not, I think it's pretty easy. But I also think that he's going to shop around, as he should. He's enjoyed his time in Chicago. And I got to tell you, I've met a lot of players in my career. Bellinger is on a very short list of most likable players that I've met. He's relaxed. I'll tell you a funny story. I'm sitting there. One of my colleagues, Eugene McIntosh, really good dude here in Chicago. We're sitting there watching the batting practice, and Bellinger's, taking fly balls, and he's working on stuff. And he knows Gene a little bit better than he knows me because Gene is there more often. He's like, what are you guys doing? And I was explaining the Immaculate Grid to my friend Gene. Have you guys played this yet?
Oh yeah.
So I'm explaining Immaculate Grid. It's basically like it's a trivia thing. And and you fill it in with players, and there's the parameters of it. And so Belly comes over and he's like, I just can't get some of this stuff. So I said, all right, well, let's open up one. So we opened up one, and he goes, hey. That's your boy. That's your boy right there. And one of them was, rookie of the year who hit 300. And he was like, put me in. And so his face popped up on the screen, and he was like so excited. And he was like, that's all I got. I don't know the rest of these answers at all. But I'm working on trying to be a better student of like the history of the game. He's just got a vibe about him that you can tell his teammates love him. You can tell that he's the type of guy that you want to be around. I hope that he's back in a Cubs uniform because I think that he's changed everything for the Cubs. I think that he's sped up the timeline. I think he's the reason that they didn't decide to trade at the trade deadline and restock and stuff. So I think that he means a lot to the Cubs, and my hope is that he continues to be a Cub. But I understand if he wants to go test the market and see what else is out there from a dollar standpoint. But he's enjoyed his time being on the North Side, and I think that'll go a long way inside the negotiation.
He surprised me with how good he is. I didn't know that. I knew the stats, but it's the entire game, running the bases, playing first base in the outfield. I mean, he's the total package.
He's a Gold Glove defender at center field. He's a Gold Glove defender at first base. He's an excellent base runner. He hits for power. He knows in some of these instances where you have to take what Joe Maddon used to call B-hacks, where you're shortening it up and trying to put the ball in play. He's healthy, and I think that that's the biggest thing. He got into some really bad habits when he got hurt, where he was good enough to play, but wasn't quite where he needed to be. So he ended up like his swing. If you take a look at like where his swing was in 2020 and 2021 versus where it is now, that 2023 swing is closer to where he was in 2019. He's standing up a little bit straighter. He's hitting left-handers this year. Like, that's one of the things where people were wondering, is he a platoon candidate at the beginning of the season because he had struggled against lefties, and now he's hitting lefties too. So you're right. You talk about complete package. That's what it looks like. Like, give me a guy that's going to play 150 games. He can play Gold Glove center field for me. He can play Gold Glove first base for me. He can bat in the top 3 in my lineup. He's a run producer. He can hit home runs. Like, there's really nothing that this guy can't do.
Great hanging out with Laurence Holmes from The Score and Chuck Walter. I'm Mick Gillispie. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe. Hanging out with us here on the Cubs Baseball Channel. I got to ask you about this other guy. And when I look at him, it's all about staying healthy, and that's Justin Steele. Can he win the Cy Young Award? And when he came up through the minor league system, he couldn't stay healthy. We saw flashes of this. He's such an anomaly because you don't normally see someone who struggled so much and then they get to the big leagues and now all of a sudden they're a superstar.
All right, Mick, I'll tell you a secret. In May, I put a bet in on FanDuel for Marcus Stroman to win the NL Cy Young Award. And man, did I think I was ahead of the game. I got him plus 5,500, and I was looking like a genius until the Cubs went to London. And then things kind of broke bad, and he hasn't been the same since. And now he's got injury piled on top of another injury, and there's torn cartilage in his rib, and no one knows how he got it. And I wonder if he sneezed, and that's what did it. Justin Steele has just been a metronome, man. Like, every time he goes out to the mound, you kind of know what you're going to get, and he's just scratching the surface of his talent. If the playoffs started today, I know that it would be tempting to start Kyle Hendricks because he's got all of the experience. I would start Justin Steele in game one of a playoff series because that guy has figured some stuff out. And I think that, yes, eventually, I think he'll get votes this year for Cy Young. He'll probably finish, I'm guessing, in the top 10, maybe top 5. But I think that, yes, that's a guy that from now on you can start talking about in those type of circles where it's a guy that's got potential. The high-end potential for Justin Steele is to be a Cy Young Award winner.
And his trajectory was on the way up starting last year, had a pretty good season, but this year took it to the next level. And you say top 10, I say I'm guaranteeing you, Laurence, right now, if I can get some odds, if you give me plus 125 odds that he finishes top 3, I'm taking those plus 125 odds. That's what I think about. That's what I think about Steele, man, and that's what I think he's going to continue to do the rest of the season. So he's been a pretty big surprise. Who's your biggest surprise on this year's team, or the biggest surprise storyline?
I mean, everyone who watches you guys' show that knows me is probably going to understand where I'm coming from. I think I'm probably at the end of the season going to have to issue some sort of apology. Nick Madrigal has been the biggest surprise.
Oh, I love Nick. I love him.
See, I don't.
I saw him at his best, though. See, I saw him at his best in Double-A. He was like, you couldn't get him out. He was like Joe Sewell. I mean, just hit everything.
Now, look, I have bad experience with Nick Madrigal as a White Sox.
I know.
And I'm like, how did this guy make it to the major leagues? Like, how did this guy end up getting drafted 4th overall?
I know.
And when they made the trade with the Cubs, I remember thinking, because I'm a big fan of Cody Hoyer. I hope he gets healthy, because next year I think he could really help the Cubs bullpen. What I thought at the time was Cody Hoyer was the jewel of the trade. He's going to end up being a high leverage reliever for the Cubs. And it might end up being a good thing for Madrigal because they don't really need him to play second base because they've got Nico Horner, and then they went out and they got Dansby Swanson. I felt like he could develop. What I wasn't expecting was for him to develop as quickly as he has. I know that Andy Green is kind of taking him on as a project. I still don't think that he's going to be a great player. And I've always kind of looked at him as being someone that should be at the end of your bench. Like, that's a perfect 26th man for a team. But he's been more than that for the Cubs this year. And I have to give him his props. Like, they changed his position. He's playing third base. He plays too much third base for me, especially now that you have Candelario there. But I understand it. They want someone with bat to ball skills. So he's been the biggest surprise for me, grudgingly. He has been the biggest surprise for me. And if he can continue to raise his baseball IQ, because that was one of the things when he was on the South Side, he'd run into outs. I mean, even this year, he got picked off on a walk earlier this year. Think about that. That's hard to do. That is hard to do, to get picked off on a walk when you're the runner on first base. Nicky Madge, he's been able to do that, but I give him props. He looks like he's starting to hit for a little bit more power, which he's a slight guy. He's smaller than I am. So I don't know if he's going to be able to generate 10 home runs a season, but what they want him to do is put the ball in play, hit singles, be smart on the bases, and play well enough that they could put him in a situation where if you have a lefty on the mound, that you could play Madrigal at third, you could play Candelario at first, and you can kind of mix and match things. So, yeah, he's been my biggest surprise.
Yeah, look, with the way that the game is right now, too, where you have so many strikeouts, I saw him coming up, and I just couldn't believe how he had this incredible 2-strike approach where he could put the ball in play. He was almost impossible to strike out. I was surprised when he got to the big leagues and struggled, but then he had that terrible injury. And I remember other people telling me, this guy stinks. And I'm like, man, I'm telling you, this guy I saw it. Like, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. And then when he got traded to the Cubs, I was like, hey, this is going to work out well. But I guess if what you saw was what happened over on the South Side, I could totally see you feeling like that, because you're not alone. I've heard a lot of people say the same thing.
Yeah, and maybe what we found out is that there's a development problem on the South Side that didn't allow Nick Madrigal to turn into a better player. Maybe that at the end of it, that's what all this whole thing is about. So
could be.
And I'll tell you this, as much as I'm talking about Nick Madrigal, I'll add this to the conversation. I didn't realize how good Dansby Swanson is.
Great point.
As a shortstop. He's a magician. He's so good. Like, Dan and I were having a conversation on the show. It's funny because we loved Javi Baez, right? Like, you watch Javi Baez play shortstop and he do stuff and you go, oh my God, like, how is that even possible? Swanson does the same stuff without, like, Javi's a violent thrower of the baseball, right? Like, he gets it and it's going, you know? Dansby is so measured, and he's got that play where he's in the hole and he slides to catch it, pops up, and then throws the runner out at first base. I've never seen someone do that as consistently as he does. Like, if you hit him 50 balls that way, he's going to make that play 47 times. And you just go, that shouldn't be possible. And Nico Horner was talking about it on our station. And one of the things that he said is that the reason that Dansby looks the way he looks is that he's so prepared, that he does an incredible job of understanding what hitters are going to do. He knows where to be. And so it looks like he just kind of appeared, you know, like on the play, but he knew that the ball was going there. He's also turned out to be, I think, like, all the time when we talk about the concept of leadership in baseball, like, it's a really hard concept to grasp because it's kind of an individual sport, right? Like pitcher versus batter, the individual sport inside of a team concept. Dansby is that dude. He is the vocal leader of this team. I've heard stories about him being in batting practice and working with younger players. Like, he figured something out that Christopher Morel was doing. And he had a conversation with him, and he's like, why don't you do what you do in batting practice in games? Like, it's the same thing. You can, if you relax like you're relaxed here, like, all of your natural talent is just going to come to the forefront. That works. He's the guy that went to the front office repeatedly and said, don't make trades. We're close. We're close. Don't trade away Bellinger. Don't trade away Stroman. We're close. We can win. That to me is leadership, and along with what he does in his own, in his day to day, like him just getting ready, reading scouting reports, making sure that his body's okay, like all of that stuff. If you're looking for leaders in baseball, you should probably start with Dansby Swanson.
Yeah. Look, I was a part of the chorus that thought that they should sell. And then all of a sudden they got it turned around, and it just doesn't happen that much. Look, I saw the market, and you saw the market too. And I'm going to tell you something. The Cardinals and the Mets rebuilt their farm systems because the market was so good for sellers. At the same time, this doesn't happen a whole lot. I mean, most of the time you're the Angels. You go and you sell and you stink and you gave away your best players. But because of Dansby Swanson and that leadership, man, I'm glad that they stuck with it. And I'm glad that this team gelled at the right time. This is a rarity, what's going on right now.
Oh, 100%. It's a rarity. Like it. And here's the thing. You guys know this. The Cardinals won't be down long.
Mm-mm.
You know, like they won't be down long. They'll figure out
Been
some
sub
tradition.
500. They've been sub 500 once this millennium. So this is
That's
about to be
right.
twice,
Yeah.
but they're the Pittsburgh Steelers of baseball. It's incredible.
Yeah. Like so you better you better take care of business while you can. And I'm so glad that I personally needed it, y'all. Like I needed there to be some baseball joy in Chicago.
Right.
And you're like, you're watching and you're looking at like run differential with the Cubs, and it didn't quite match their record. And you're like, what's happening here? And so Jed had talked about that, and that he wanted to see something before the trade deadline. And I love that. Like here, I'll put it on you. I'll put it on the players of this team. If you want the Bellinger to still be here, if you want us to add instead of subtracting, then you've got to win. And what did they do? They went out and won with 13 to 16 or whatever to put them right in the mix here. I love when teams force management's hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like they force their hand. And now you're in a position where you're competing for a playoff spot. That to me is great.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
And not just competing for a playoff spot. If the season were to end when we're filming this podcast, the Cubs would be a half game up in the wild card. They would be in the postseason, and everyone in Chicagoland wants some. Well, maybe not White Sox fans, but every Cubs fan obviously wants some October baseball, and that is what we're going for right now. Got to ask you this because we talked with Ron Coomer about it on the last show. We've interviewed all our subjects and gotten the same answer with every single one. So maybe you're an outlier here. Day or night game at Wrigley Field?
Am I covering it or am I going to it?
Fan.
Fan.
Cold beer.
Day games at Wrigley are pretty great, but if you end up in the wrong spot,
That's sun.
yeah.
Break it down, man.
I'm trying to figure out. Give me a late September night game at Wrigley.
A little bit chilly. Playoffs.
Like just a little bit of crisp in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And give me that, and I'm good.
One of the best ones I ever went to was Jake Arrieta, part of his like Cy Young campaign. A night game at Wrigley. It's crisp, everybody's into it. We're warm with the beer and having a good time, and just watching him like just break people off with his breaking ball, his changeup, and then that 96. You remember that year? Like he was just unhittable.
Yes, he was like unstoppable, man. Like, and you saw it the year before. You saw it in the second half of that 14 season.
Yeah.
And then it carries over into 15, and he was Bob Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
Like the stuff that he was doing was Bob Gibson-esque. And that's not a name that I throw around a lot, but you look at the statistics of what Jake Arrieta did inside of that season, and it was he was mauling people, like just out there knowing that his slider was just cracking and no one could get get on base. No one was going deep. Like, he was in complete control. He had everyone in Chicago wanting to do Pilates. He was doing Pilates, and he said that was kind of the key to what he was able to do.
Maybe I need to do Pilates.
They even brought in, like, especially for him, before they had kind of redone Wrigley and redone like the clubhouse and stuff, they had brought in Pilates machines especially for him.
Man, don't you miss the Joe Maddon days, just as covering the team, all the weird stuff that you would see? I mean, I remember being at spring training, and that one day they had baby bears, and then, one day a guy's doing magic, and there's a DJ there, and then, there's the guy from the dude from, just movie stars would show up. Like, that was a fun time.
I used to do Joe Maddon Show every week. Like, he'd come on and we talk about, I guess we talk about baseball, but usually we're talking about something else.
Right.
I'm such a fan of Joe. Like, I feel like I owe Joe. Like Joe did a lot for my career, because it became must listen radio Tuesday at noon when I would have him on, and we go in all of these different directions. We had a lot of fun. I remember the first time we had him on the show, my producer, is a very talented broadcaster named Tony Gill, and he now runs podcasts for NBC Chicago. And Tony said, like, why don't we do something different with Joe? Because Joe's a different dude. So we were having a conversation before Joe came on about oatmeal raisin cookies and chocolate chip cookies. Now, I'm team chocolate chip, all day, every day.
Me too.
Tony is counterculture and like everything. So he's like, no, oatmeal raisin is awesome. We bring Joe onto the show. Joe goes on to a 5-minute diatribe about how no one should be choosing oatmeal raisin cookies over chocolate chip. And he like broke it down, and like Tony's heart was just broken, because he thought for sure that Joe was going to side with him.
Oh, yeah.
On this. And like, Joe was like, no, that's ridiculous. Like, of course it's chocolate chip cookies. Like, who in the world would think that it wasn't? Like, so ever since then, like, whatever we wanted to talk about, we could talk about with Joe. Even if when towards the end where, I'm having conversations where I'm, are you worried you're not going to be the manager of the Cubs anymore? And he would give you legit answers to it. So yeah, I missed that era just because of that. I think Joe has some really interesting thoughts on where the game can go. I'm not sure that he's expressed them the way that would allow for him to still be in baseball. There's a part of me that's like, Joe, let me just be your translator on some of this stuff.
Yeah, right.
He's hired again. But yeah, he was the life of the party and a lot of fun. Really, really great dude. Like, one of my favorites that I've ever dealt with in this industry.
Let's get you one more and let you get out of here, Laurence. The White Sox. I know this is the Cubs baseball channel.
Oh,
we are in Chicago.
Bring it on.
They share the city. Could they leave? Could they leave, man?
Yes, but quick history lesson. 35 years ago, the White Sox under the same owner did the same thing. That's how the Tampa Bay Rays Stadium got built. The White Sox were saying that they were going to leave and they were going to go to Tampa. I don't know if they'll leave, but there's going to be a new owner, and I don't think it's going to be a Reinsdorf, even though there is, Michael Reinsdorf is kind of running the Bulls now. There's some options for them in the city. First of all, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a little bit. Their ballpark is great.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The ballpark on 35th and Shields is great. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, there's literally no reason to move. But if you are going to move, there's talk, because the Bears are going to eventually move, that you could retrofit Soldier Field, and then the White Sox would technically still be on the south side, but they'd also be on the lakefront. it just seems like here's what I want. Because here's the problem. I'm a big comic book guy, big superhero guy. I need Superman to show up, and I'm gonna be like, Kal-El, here's what we need. I need you to take the White Sox stadium and pick it up, and then rotate it 90 degrees and put it back, so that then you would get the Chicago skyline.
Nice.
It would look similar, but not the same, to PNC Park, where you've got the backdrop of the city. I used to play college ball, and we played at a field that was on Roosevelt and Halsted. Okay. Now, that field that we played on faced northeast, and it was the perfect view of downtown Chicago. Like, it just, the league that we used to play in the summer literally used to be called the Skyscraper League because of how, like, picturesque it was for the park that we played in. University of Illinois Chicago has fields that have been funded by Curtis Granderson, former major league player. Curtis Granderson, he's from Chicago. All of the fields face that direction. That's the only thing that's missing for the White Sox, is that the ballpark is facing like the expressway. Like, that's not picturesque at all. Having it face downtown would be great. If they move, I'm kind of stuck. If they stay in the area, I guess I stick with them. If they were to move to Nashville, I think I would be freed Dan and I were joking about how, like, then I become like a baseball agnostic, and then I got to figure out, like, what team am I rooting for then? Because I got no beef. Like, I love the dudes over at the Cubs. Like, ever since Steele walked in the door, the relationship that they've had with members of the media, with the score in particular, with myself, like, I've done hour-long sit-downs with Theo and Jed and Joe Maddon. I host the David Ross show now.
Right.
So I've got no animus, like, towards, I'm not a stereotypical White Sox fan. Like, when the White Sox and the Cubs play, sure, I'd like for the White Sox to win. Although this year I bet against the White Sox because I'm all about fading the White Sox in 2023. I'm all about it. But if they were to leave and go to Nashville, I don't think they would be my team anymore. I think that would probably be it. And I'd go searching for someone else. I think it'd be great for Nashville, though. And they might be able to appreciate it better. It's weird. Like, White Sox fans know, like, we're in a big market, but we're a small market team.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Times did this thing a few years ago. They did a heat map where you could see where, from the zip codes, they could kind of tell who was a fan of what team, right? So you have the state of Illinois, and you look, and it's blue, 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 until you get to about Springfield. Then it's red, 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 red for the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little pocket that's black that's around the lakefront in Northwest Indiana. And that's the White Sox. Like,
yeah, right.
And in the southwestern suburbs, there's a bunch of White Sox fans. And strangely enough, in Schaumburg, which we like to call Schaum Vegas, there's a little pocket of White Sox fans. But that's it. There's not a lot of us. And that's okay. Like, I have understand that in this town, it's probably 70-30 and maybe 75-25 Cubs fans to White Sox fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like for them to get right. And they don't seem like want to. So for me, if they were to go to Nashville or Charlotte, even with the connections to both places, I think that would be the end of me as a White Sox fan.
It's interesting because Nashville's going to get an expansion team if they don't get the Rays. You know what? I never even thought about Charlotte, but the Sox AAA affiliates there, so they'd have that connection, and that's a big league city without a team. But I just can't really imagine the White Sox leaving. I thought the timing was hilarious, though. Whoever leaked that, just exact same day as you fire your entire front office.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
I was like, who did this? Oh, I wonder, where did this come from today?
Timing of it is very, very suspicious. The way that the White Sox have been doing business lately has been real suspicious too. So we'll see. I think that they have overplayed their hand a little bit, and until they start winning, the new mayor of Chicago is a Cubs fan, so you're not gonna get any help there. It's not like the old days when the Dailies were in charge, because the Dailies were diehard White Sox fans.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna get any help there, and I believe the governor is a Cubs fan too.
You're surrounded.
Yeah. You're surrounded, and if you're out here trying to get money, if you're trying to get the state and local money, I'm not sure that you're gonna get any of that. So maybe a move is what's necessary.
Hey, look, if they move, which I don't think they're going to do, but if they do, you have to come to the Cubs. I mean, you have to join us.
I don't know, man. Like, you talk about expansion team, like, I'm very partial to Montreal. I'd love for Montreal to get a team again. That would
very possible. Very possible.
That's where my heart would go. Like, for real. Like, I am in love with that city.
Did you like the old Expos? But Andre Dawson, before he joined the Cubs, one of my friends, Jeff Facero, pitched for them. I mean, he's like you. He wants to have another team. Delino DeShields, I remember him. Gary Carter. That's a great player. Yeah, Tim Raines, rock.
Yeah, I mean, they had some incredible players. I've had so many conversations with people in Montreal about baseball coming back. They want it bad. Like, they want their team back so badly. So if the White Sox were to move and there was an expansion team in Montreal, it's easy. Like, that's easy. I become an Expos fan like that, like overnight.
Are they the Expos again? Do they go right back into it, or?
I don't know why you wouldn't. Like that. Like, you could really do some cool stuff with all of the colors and Mick, they're still selling Expos. I was in Montreal a few months ago, and they are doing all sorts of variations on the Expo stuff. I found a White Sox version of the Expos logo, black hat, white. Like, it was like, yeah, like, this is perfect. So yeah, that becomes easy. If it's not Montreal, then I'm open for business as a free agent, and the Cubs would be very high on my list.
All right, good stuff. That's Laurence Holmes. You can check him out. Bernstein and Holmes, 670 The Score, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And for now, man, just enjoy the rest of your vacation. It sounds like you're just chilling in the city right now. So enjoy it, and thanks for coming on the show today.
Guys, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again. Roll Tide.
Hey, Roll Tide. And look, if you need me for any kind of tell you about Hollywood Pete, who's on the way up, all you got to do is let me know, Laurence. Great to see you, man.
Great to see you guys too.